At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
August 24th, 2016, the I Am 911 movement is born. One of my personal stories set the tone for this movement. What started out as a way to raise awareness for the reclassification issue for dispatchers quickly turned into peer support. 911 professionals from all over the world were sharing their stories. On Facebook alone, at that time, the engagements were over 34 million. It spawned a peer support session at conferences called Imagine Listening, where dispatchers shared their stories out loud or on paper. For years, I have been asked if this would ever become a book, coming June 2023, and available now for pre-order on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. From Titletown Publishing, Imagine Listening, Your Worst Day is Our Everyday. If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader in next-gen core services, and a big shout-out, as always, to subscribers of the podcast. Thank you so very much. I would not be able to do everything that I do if it wasn't for all of you, and especially those of you who are watching, listening, sharing, supporting, everything. So thank you so very much. There's a lot of stuff going on. There are several episodes that are coming up, and we are quickly moving towards episode 500. We already hit a goal just a couple months ago of hitting and surpassing 2 million downloads of this podcast, which is unbelievable. When I first started this, I had no idea, no thought as to how big this was going to be, and I can't thank you all enough for that. I appreciate it more than you know. A lot of speaking opportunities, conferences coming up, and everything as well. We've got Florida APCO, we've got National NINA, we've got Imagine Listening, Your Worst Day is Our Everyday, the book that is going to be launching at National NINA. It's going to be the middle of June. This is June 20th and is also available now for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Books A Million. You can just hit up links, that's with 2 I's, links.co/WTT podcast, and you can pre-order from there. And I thank you very much for that as well. But to thank all of those who had the courage to share and who continue to share their stories for the I Am 911 movement. Thank you so very much. And also, the podcast is heard in over 60 countries. Man, thank you. It has been amazing. So we've got a lot of stuff, as I said, coming up, especially those for who are subscribers of the podcast. We've got some more Singing Badly in My Car episodes that are going to be coming out, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I look like a fool, but it's gonna be fun either way. It's all for you. It's all for your entertainment, so make sure to look out for that, and I am super excited for my guest today. My guest is Kate, and she's a paramedic, artist, an upcoming author, and a mom extraordinaire out of New Jersey. Let's welcome her.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is gonna be good. This is gonna be fun. And we were already chatting in the beginning before this, just kind of getting into the mix, and I'm super excited. We were laughing and stuff. So this is I feel a good vibe, and this is gonna be fun. So just how's everything been going? We've been kind of talking on email for a little while, and I'm happy to have you here.
I'm thrilled to be here. So thanks for having me. Things are going really well over here. I mean, I do a lot of I work all the time because how do you not? I have a multitude of jobs, plus small children, plus a farm within my very small house. So
What?
it's life.
Yeah, yeah, life. That's how it happens, right?
Yeah,
Life,
yeah.
such as life. So, before we jump into your story, then I have a question because it sounds like you wear a lot of hats like myself. Do you sleep? Or what is that word? Do you even know what the word is?
I feel like I sort of levitate over the bed for a little while, like
Oh,
maybe like 30 minutes or so, and then I'm good. Yeah, that's all I
that
need.
yeah, I remember that from my days in dispatch, working midnights and then having an overtime shift and having to
Ooh,
go home and do the same thing, just kind of whoop, just right there.
yeah.
And like, all right, now we get up, let's
Mm,
spend some time with the family and then go back in and take some calls.
yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's
Such is life,
life.
right?
Yeah, that's how it works, especially
Oh,
in our field, like I don't know how it is across the country, but it's
mhm.
very common to have more than one job in EMS. And currently I have 3 as well as 2 instructor positions. I teach at a paramedic program and an EMT program. So I don't ever really stop. I don't know what stopping is. I don't That's uncomfortable for me.
Yeah.
So
Okay. All right. Let's explore that really quick before we get
okay.
into your story because this is interesting because I feel the same way. And I've spoken to a lot of people, and some of them are not that way, but you and I kind of have this connection here. Yeah, I feel the same way. Like I can't if I stop, I don't know. There's something that I need to keep going. I think it's more so not that I need to keep going, it's more evolution of what I'm doing. I need to continue to evolve and
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
do what I'm doing and keep it fresh and keep it going because I just can't sit. It's just not me.
No, I mean, even if I look like I'm sitting, my brain is not sitting. And I just learned recently that not everyone has a constant inner dialogue in their head. And like they actually have quiet. And I've never experienced that. I don't know what that's like. And it's never quiet. Even when I'm sleeping, I'm dreaming. So and they're vivid dreams. It's like, yeah, we fell out of the sky, landed on this roller coaster, just sort of flew off into the space this way. Like, what? I don't know. Just
That
uh,
that is interesting because I'm the same way. Like I'll be sitting there and I will try. Like I can meditate. Like I'm into meditating, I'm into yoga and stuff. And in those moments, I can actually bring myself to the point where I'm focused. But if I'm just chilling on the couch, and I'm trying to clear my head, my inner voice is still talking. My inner voice is still like, why are you not talking? Why are we not talking right now? Are you mad at
yeah,
me?
right.
And then I'm like, and then the conversation starts, and my kid will say something. I'm like, wait, what? Hold on, I'm having a conversation with myself here.
Right.
It's crazy, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I call that jumping lily pads. I'll start a conversation in my head and then bring somebody else in, and I'm like, "Oh, sorry, we were on a different lily pad," which is just what it was.
Oh, I
Also, I'm
love
I'm
that.
the poster child for ADD, in case that's not already
Ah,
completely obvious. And I feel like it's almost a prerequisite to get into EMS, because we need that adrenaline rush. We need that stimulation, and I think that's part of why I don't sit still well, because my brain doesn't stop. I don't stop, and I think that the constant go and the constant variety is really what is enticing for anybody in our field. I tried to do tech work as a as a new EMT
Hmm.
in the ER, and I was bored out of my mind. Like I could not deal with it. One, because it was waitressing with bodily fluids, but two, because I was stuck within four walls, like for 12 hours. This is not okay for me. So I realized very quickly I don't belong within the hospital. I like the freedom of being able to do what we can do, as far as on our downtime, and then the autonomy of doing what I do on the street. So yeah,
Oh,
total ADD
man,
poster child, 100%.
it's it's like I've known you for years because I say that because I feel the same way in the sense like the way I have everything set up, the what I'm looking at, it almost looks like I'm sitting at my console in dispatch. And when I left dispatch to work on the private side of 911, I was a communications director for a 911 solutions company and doing a lot of different things there, but I'm sitting in an office as well. And I'm just kind of sitting there and I'm like, waiting for a phone call. Nope, I don't do that anymore. So I got to keep myself busy. So I'm
Yeah,
just going and going and going. But you're right. It wasn't the same. I'm just kind of sitting there now on my own. As you can see in back of me, I've got my print press and I've got all types of things that I'm doing. So it's not so much the same, not at all the same adrenaline rush, but the fact that I'm on the move and I'm doing and doing and doing and doing, where
right.
like in dispatch, it was the same thing. I've got all these monitors, I'm yelling stuff across, I'm taking phone calls, I'm doing all this stuff at the same time. And it's keeping my mind going. So I'm with you.
Yeah, right.
Definitely with you. Now, Um, let's get into our DeLorean. Let's go back in time. And how did you start off in public safety to begin with? Do you come from a family of public safety, or do you just? Oh, you're
No,
shaking your head.
no,
So
I'm
you
I'm
just
an
dived
anomaly.
in, right?
Yeah. So I I wanted to be a doctor,
Hmm.
and I got that astute idea because of I spending hours watching ER, because that is real life. Now,
Right.
like now I can't watch those shows. Like Grey's Anatomy shocked asystole once, and I was done with them. Like cold turkey, done. I can't. You call yourself a medical show. But that was actually, the catalyst of wanting to get into medicine. I
Mhm.
really liked physiology in high school. So this is like fresh out of high school. And my mom said to me, well, if you want to be a doctor, you should probably figure out if you like people first. So she encouraged me, and I do like people, but she encouraged me to get my EMT. So I went and I did that, and I was sort of like half paying attention because I was, fresh out of high school. My friends were going out, they were partying. We had frat parties, like not that I was in a sorority, but I would always get invited to things like that, and that was
Mhm.
my priority for a long time. While I was in college. Um, and I sort of let it go, like in the middle of trying. And then a girlfriend convinced me to go to EMT school with her a second time for me, because I just walked away from it. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. No, you won't like that. No, don't. You're wasting your time. Why are you going to even do that? And she wore me down until I decided to do the EMT program with her. And then we got jobs as a transport, because in New Jersey there's transport and then there's 911. And we also separate between ALS and BLS, advanced life support and basic life support. So we got a job in transport. I thought that was okay. And then she went and got a job at Atlantic City, and that's 911. That's urban EMS. So she brought me along with her, and I started working there. And I remember looking around one day and going, this is it. Like I belong here. And it was the weirdest thing, because it wasn't my intention to stay there at all. And even then I wasn't intending to stay as an EMT, but I felt like for the first time in my newly adult life that I belonged somewhere, that I fit something. Because before that, I had college, but I didn't really, really, truly know what I was going to wind up doing with that. So from there, I did a lot of things. I went to nursing school for a little while, decided I didn't want to do that. I went and got my master's in biology, was still going to go for a doctor. And then I was like, you know what? I need to have money to go to med school. So I walked away from that, and I went to paramedic school to then save up money to go back to medical school. Only that never happened. I spent the early part of my career very much a white cloud, or at least that's how it felt, where things happen around me. I might be on shift, but it didn't happen on my call. And then even my ride time as a medic student was like almost nothing happened, or it was like pulling teeth to get anything to happen. And literally the moment that I was signed off, I had my paramedic, I was on orientation. The first call at night that we had was like 4:00 in the morning, and was the sickest patient I had to date in all of my ride time. And it was just fire from there. I was dipped into the deep end of a pool on fire. Good luck, get good or get out of the way. I mean, those were my choices. And it's just been a whirlwind ever since. Oh.
Whoa. So, okay, let's back up a little bit. So,
Sure.
There's those moments, right? And it's interesting, whether it's a run, whether it's a call, and whatever it might be, or maybe even a moment where you're with coworkers or something, and you feel what you said, where you have that moment where you realize you are where you're supposed to be, and it kind of puts a lot of things into perspective, and what you wanted, or not even that, even kind of thinking, this is not what I expected. I did not expect to be doing this. However, I have this feeling, and I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, this is your calling.
Yeah.
And for me, there were different phone calls that had come in, but I remember sitting in dispatch and thinking, damn, this is really where I'm supposed to be, and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Because years before, if somebody would have told me that I would have been taking 911 calls and helping people, or listening to people die on the phone with me, or taking phone calls from my grandmother when she passed away, that I would be taking that call, I would have said, you're lying to me. Like, I'm not going to be doing that.
Yeah.
I was a big fan of Rescue 911, which that was my my only example of 911, where at the end everyone gets to meet the callers and shit, and everything
Oh.
is has a happy ending. No,
Right.
that's not true. There are some happy endings, but that doesn't
Yeah.
always happen. So I didn't have a true depiction of what 911 really is. But going back to the main point, there's those moments where you're working, where you're doing this work, this service, helping people, and you realize, this is what I was meant to do.
Yeah.
And you started out, like you said, as that the white cloud, everything's happening around you, and then bam, things just continue to hit and hit and hit. Now, was this, you said this was just out of training, or were you still training, or when did
It was
that?
my first orientation shift. I had, I don't know, 5 orientation shifts, I think. So it was literally the very first one, and it was the first call that we had. Nothing
Oh my
happened, nothing
God.
happened, nothing happened. 4 a.m. Bam.
And
I
at
was like,
4 a.m. no
oh.
less.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
That's
When everybody's on their A game, right?
right, yeah, or on their 10th cup of coffee, trying to stay awake.
Yeah.
It's the craziest thing, the amount of people that I have spoken to. Some of them during training had some crap calls, but a lot of them, it was either the day that they were going to be off on their own, or the day after, whichever. And it's like, the universe, the public safety universe, is like, welcome, and this is what you
Yeah.
got now.
Oh, I have such a reputation that I can go to multiple projects in different counties, and they have the same response. Oh, you're here today?
Oh no.
Yeah. And people either want to work with me or don't want to work with me for the exact same reason, because we will do work. And a lot of it is like, you can't make this up. I'm like, I'm sorry. This is, I didn't have a choice. I had 2 years as a paramedic where the things that came at me, like, I just could not make it up. And it was just constant. And it was, it wasn't something I could really get away from, to the point where it was almost exhausting. But it took me those full 2 years to finally feel confident, because it's
Mhm.
not like I had a nice, easy ride into it where I'm like, all right, I'm good. You're supposed to feel good about it 6 months in and really be confident in a year. No, that's not how that worked for me at all.
Right.
But now, I know that no matter what happens, I'm going to handle it, because I didn't have a choice, 10 years ago when I was still dealing with that. So it's just funny, they're like, even if I'm not working, did you drive through this area? Because it just blew up. I'm like, come on, guys. Like,
You're like, yes, I did. Yeah.
I once drove home. It was after a night shift. This was a couple years ago, and I was driving down the Garden State Parkway. So for us, that's one of our big highways.
Mhm.
And I saw a car into the woods and a trooper there, and I'm like, what? Well, that doesn't look good. But cars aren't always as bad as they seem. The windshield was clearly busted out of it. So I flipped around. I called my friends who were on duty to see if they had heard anything about it, because just because we see it doesn't mean it's going to get dispatched.
Mhm.
And they're like, yeah, we're going, but they wound up getting to a different diverted to a different call. So I flip around and get back onto that side of the parkway, which there's no like stop lights or anything. Like you have to find either an exit or an illegal turnaround.
Mhm.
And I get there and there's two people in the vehicle. There's a cop standing next to them. There's three more in the woods. And he's like, yeah, I think they're okay. I'm like, how did they get into the woods? So that call turned into an MCI, and we had 5 ALS providers, 5 ALS units sent there. Our county only has 6. And so I got literally smacked when I was there. People walked up to me, like, it's your fault. Yeah.
Oh man. See,
Yeah.
okay. So if it were me at a at a spot, and I had some, like new recruits or whichever coming in, and I wanted them to see some shit or experience some I would call you and I would pay you. I would bring you in so that you so that you
Yeah.
could bring that energy in.
Yep.
And oh man. Oh,
They
that's
used to say, if you wanted skills, go work with Kate that day. Okay. I've had 3 intubations in a shift more than once, which is not really normal. Like you might get 1 a shift, and sometimes you don't get any. I've had so many twice. Well, I've had so many times where I've intubated twice in a shift that I don't even know the number. I know that I've done 3 intubations in a shift twice. So it's just kind of like
oh my
I just have to accept
lord.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So wow. So you learned like very fast.
Yeah, I didn't have a
And
choice. It was
right.
literally deep end on fire. Good luck.
So my first night in dispatch, now this is in no way any comparison than to you, but and the stuff that you've dealt with, but I remember going in the very first PD that I worked at, because I later ended up finishing off my dispatching career in the county that I grew up in at a central dispatch. So in central Florida, where I started out dispatching, I go in for that first night. I watch my trainer take a call. Like I observe him take a call. I've got no experience, right? Except for the TV show that I saw years ago as a kid, right? And so I'm observing him. He takes the phone call. He's done with the phone call, and then he turns and looks at me and he goes, "You're next." And I thought, "What?
Uh,
Like there's nothing
yeah,
else? There's not dude, like there's nothing else to this?" Cuz I thought he was joking, right? Cuz I mean, you're dealing with people who are calling in, living their own nightmare,
right,
and I don't know how to perform CPR over the phone, like what the hell?
right.
And so the good thing was that our dispatch and our small PD, we transferred medicals. We didn't do medicals there.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, so we didn't have that part, but I still had to take the pertinent information. And so I'm just sitting there and like, what do I do? And he goes, "Look, the only way you're going to learn how to do this is by doing it, and I'll be here to help you out." He goes, "It takes this. You need to have thick skin, common sense, and you need to be human, and you can do this." And I'm like, "Okay."
Mm,
I did take like a week or a 40-hour which is a week, a 40-hour beginner's dispatcher course where they took us through a bunch of other stuff. And there's other training that I did later on, and I did get my emergency medical dispatching certification and all that other shit. But that first night was an eye opener. It was
Oh, I
just
bet.
throwing me into the lion's den, and it's like, all right,
Oh, good luck.
you've got meat strapped all around you. You're gonna be attacked. Yeah. So in no way comparison. However, that same, like, you just getting thrown in and
Yeah.
you learn it, you're doing it. Now, for you, like during that training time and everything, what were some of the things that were overwhelming? Because this is some of the stuff that I've got tons of friends in public safety, whether it be police, fire, EMS, or dispatch, whichever. But the other side is some of the things I always wonder about. Like, when you started going through that training, I mean, it's enough pressure for me to be taking phone calls, right? And have people's lives in my hands over the phone, per se. However, you are right there and
Yeah.
you're with them while I'm creating stuff in my head and having secondary trauma in a completely different way.
Mhm.
You're right there with them. What is that even like?
So it definitely depends on obviously what's going on.
Mhm.
Any typical Kate call, as we call it here. Um, yeah, I'm a verb. I'm
Listen,
a
you
noun.
you can have
An
labels.
adjective. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, it's a great time.
Oh,
Um,
man.
so basically, like that stuff goes sideways fast, and you kind of have to be on the lookout for what could go wrong,
Mhm.
because that's usually how that happens. I've had calls where we had a guy an older man who was in a car and he went out as an unconscious. He was parked in a parking lot, but we thought, asleep in a hotel parking lot. Well, here it turns out he actually passed out, and he's grossly diaphoretic when we get to him. He doesn't remember what happened. Um, I remember specifically the cop putting the car in park because he hit the gas the moment that he was woken up, which would have been bad because it was on a highway. Um, and I had to kind of think on my feet on that one. I had a stronger partner, because I was still brand new. He had a possible cardiac history. He had a pacemaker. I said I wanted to do a 12 lead EKG to just take a look. And this is still when my partners would basically quiz me like I was a student,
Mhm.
even though I had passed, but they're still like, well, and now what do you do? And I'm like, well, I want to do the 12 lead. And he goes, why? He's paced. And I was like, well, I would like to make sure that he stays paced, which sounds self-explanatory, right? And I was taught once you put the 12 lead on, you leave it on,
Mhm.
and he was not about that at all, but it was my patient. So we went en route to the hospital. The guy starts to remember what had happened. He started to not feel good and he pulled over. And then he adds that, oh, I was in the hospital for a week with chest pain, but they didn't find anything. And then he starts burping. And I'm looking at the EMT in the back with me, and I'm like, that's not good. And she goes, oh, are you going to throw up? Because she doesn't have the same level of education. For
Mhm.
us, if you're burping, that's usually could be indicative of a cardiac issue. So I look at him and I look at my monitor, and I'm like, nah, that's not. I don't know enough to be right about that. And I look at him, and I look at the monitor. I'm like, are you okay? I could touch him, sir.
Mhm.
And I said, are you not feeling good like that now? And he's like, he grunts at me. Well, here he's in VTAC. And I'm like, oh. So I start spinning because I'm still a brand new medic. So I have the phone in my hand because I need to call the doctor. I need to get orders. I have the pacer pads out because I need to cardiovert him. I have the medication out in multiple vials, and I'm literally like this, to the point that we're just at the hospital at this point. My partner opens up the back doors, and I show him the 12 lead. I'm like, I need help. He goes, he's in VTAC. I'm like, yeah, no shit. Can you get in?
Help me out here.
Yeah. So it was like, I guess for me as a brand new medic, it was very much trying to figure out how to do all the things and then being okay with not doing all the things, because sometimes you just don't have the time.
Mhm.
Sometimes you can't get past A to get to B to get to C. And other things arise. So I took that call kind of hard after the fact because I felt like this guy could have died on me, and he absolutely could have. And I literally couldn't bring myself to do anything because I wanted to do all the things and I couldn't decide which was first. So we wound up cardioverting him in the bay at the hospital. And he goes, ah, who did that? And my partner points at me and he goes, it's always the little ones. I'll never forget that. And it's just like,
Oh,
okay. I mean, that's 12 years ago now, and it's still a story that sticks with me. So it became kind of being okay with not being perfect, and really being fluid with the treatment. Like, okay, so we're gonna, you just had a syncopal episode. Nope. Okay, you died. All right. Well, we're just gonna move on to cardiac arrest and ACLS protocols. Okay, then here we go. Like while I'm on the phone with the doctor getting orders. No, never mind. They just went into cardiac arrest. I'm going to follow ACLS protocols. I'll call you back if I need anything. Thanks. And meanwhile, I get off the phone, I stamp my foot and I go, again? Because, that kind of stuff just happened to me like 3 times in a week. I'm like, what is going on?
oh
So,
man,
yeah.
that is
It's,
crazy. That's nuts. I mean, because there's all of that you're thinking about, right? There's all of that stress, and you have all of these different variables really that are now coming in, and you're trying to, I mean, you're triaging, right? You're going through and doing
yep,
all the things that you need to do, but also in the sense of like in comparison to dispatch, like there's a lot of times where we're going down these line of questions, right? And if you're doing the medical stuff, there's, well, for me, when I it's gonna make me sound old as fuck, but um we had these cards even up to 2013 when I was already going to be done in dispatch. We had these cards where you flipped depending on the questions for our EMD
right,
protocol, you flip to different cards. Now it's all electronic and, all this other stuff, but the way they have it now in some of those spots, people don't like because you have to go through that standard and do all the questioning to get to the next questions, where sometimes, like you were saying, you don't have time for a lot of that stuff, and you have
right.
to sometimes think outside of the box. And I think that's what was one of the hard things for a lot of people coming on after me, was trying to think out of the box because there were so many standards and people wanted to be so perfect, and we
Right.
are our own worst critics. I mean, everybody is, right, in their own way, but in public safety and the stuff that we do,
Yeah.
that
Because it
shit eats
matters.
at you. Right.
Yeah. It
Right.
matters. I could never be a dispatcher. One of my girlfriends is a dispatcher. I mean, I'm friends with multiple
Mhm.
dispatchers, but like one of my best friends is one as well. And like I've sat in the room before when you have all the screens and all the phones going off and you're dispatching over here, dispatching over, like for someone with ADD like me, it is overwhelming, overstimulating. Like I felt myself kind of like internally twitching a little bit, like my eyes starting to go, like, I can't do this. No, that is way too much. Thank you. Thank you. No, thank you. So
Yeah.
I give you guys all
Same.
the props in the world because nope, could not
Yeah.
do
I
that.
I think I could do some stuff out in the field, but,
I'm sure you could.
being on the phone was just, it was what I jumped in, and, I actually went to, I went for testing to get to be a trooper in Florida, and I had passed everything, even my physical, even though my leg cramped up and I fell when I was dragging the
Mm,
dummy.
I don't mean to laugh. That's funny
Oh,
though.
no, 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 I'm saying it because it is funny, because this is the bullshit that happens to me. So, I'll just say this really quick, and we'll get back into this, but I'm
Okay.
dragging this 100-pound dummy, right? And you've got, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes or something to do this entire obstacle course. And I was kicking ass. I was like, "Yeah, I was training for it and everything." And, I start pulling, and I'm halfway through, my thigh on my right side just, like,
Oh
tenses up,
no.
crazy cramp. I fall back, and when I fall back, my shoe flips up in the air. It lands next to me, and I hear one of the sergeants yelling at me, "Get up, Martinez, get up. You need to save that person." So I get up and I finish the whole thing with a muddy sock, and I made it with like a minute and a half left to spare. And that same sergeant that was yelling at me before, he comes up to me with my shoe And he goes, "Martinez, you got a lot of heart." He goes, "But you need to eat more bananas. That shit won't happen." He's like, "You need more potassium so that you don't cramp up." I was like, "Thank you, sir. I'll remember that." And the only thing though that kept me out was 2 points on my credit score. That's what
Oh,
kept me out of the academy, 'cause, and I said, "What is that? I don't understand why that matters." And they said,
yeah.
"That has to do with responsibility, and if your credit score isn't where we want it to be, there's a possibility that you would take
Wow.
bribes or something, for people looking for
Wow.
information." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well."
That feels
But
like a deep dive on that one.
right, yeah.
I don't know.
But I'm glad that that happened though, because dispatch ended up being my thing, and it continued, and everything that I do now for a living comes from dispatch, but also stems from my struggle with phone calls and not having people to really talk to. Is therapeutic for me to write about it and share my stories. And then more people in dispatch started sharing as well. And then I started doing the podcast. So really it's always been a therapeutic thing for me, and turned into something completely different.
Yep.
But good nonetheless. So, you go through all that training, and which sounds completely intense to be there, to be on hand and everything. And you also get something that we don't get all the time in dispatch, and a lot of that is closure. And that's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's something that we really struggle with. Um, so I always like to ask and hear from the other side, because you go through those runs, and everything that's going, but also you go right to the next one. And do you
Right.
ever get a chance to kind of sit and decompress or kind of reflect on it, or do you wait until after you're off of the shift?
I definitely wait till after I'm off the shift because if
Mhm.
I start to think about it in that moment, I will just crumble,
Mhm.
and
That makes
I
sense.
have
Yeah.
other responsibilities,
Right.
and who knows what's coming after, that call. I still have to be on my A game. Those people deserve that same amount of professionalism and um, skill
Mhm.
that the people in the last call had, even if it might have not made a difference. So
Right.
I typically wait till I'm home. I can talk to my husband about it. He's also in the field, so that's helpful. Um,
Yes. That is always good to have someone who completely understands versus talking to someone else, and they're just kinda looking at you and
right,
say,
like,
"I don't know what
oh
to say to you." And I'm
yeah,
like, "Okay,
yeah,
let's go eat or something."
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
where do you go from there, right? But,
Well,
one go ahead.
he was my clinical coordinator when I was a
Mhm.
paramedic student, and a little bit after, for a couple years after I became a paramedic. So he's listening right now. Um, So I also had the clinical Monday morning quarterback whenever I would bring him stuff.
Yeah.
And he's also, because of his position, he could listen in on the tape line as we were calling in and talking to the doctor. So he's texting me shit magnet as I'm trying to get orders for an RSI. And I'm like, I'm totally distracted now
Right.
because I get a text from him. I'm trying to have a conversation with the doctor. And I'm like, this is not fair. But yeah, so I mean, it was definitely helpful to talk to him about it. But at the same time, I'm like, yes, I know I should have done that. That probably would have been better for next time. Like, thanks a lot. Like, all right.
Right.
Yeah.
Just write it down and
Great.
pass me a note later, okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Can I get through the emotional part of it first? Thank you. Thanks.
Right. What I love, just kind of backing up just a couple, here, is the fact that you said that one of the things that you needed to do was to kind of throw away the thought of having to be perfect, because I
Yep.
think that's one of the things that a lot of us, especially in the beginning, really have that eats at us.
Yep.
Like because of the job that we do, whether it be on the phone, whether it be in person, whichever, we're dealing with lives, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that you almost feel like that's what the public expects, for you to be perfect all the time. And that's not true for anyone in any profession. Like you
Yep.
get lost into that thought process, and that's when you start fucking up, because then you're just searching or just so obsessed with wanting to be perfect that you don't allow yourself grace. And I think
Right.
that's one of the things that we have to surpass. And I also dig the fact that we're the same in the sense we're thinking that, like you said, it takes about 2 years. And in dispatch, I felt that it was about the same way, 2.5, 3 years to really be dialed in to what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, I absolutely. That was definitely at least 2 years, but because of everything I had to deal with, I couldn't get away from it.
Mhm.
Um I couldn't get past my perfectionism. That was definitely an issue. And honestly, it really ate at me till probably about COVID, till dealing with COVID and like all the rules went out the window. And that is truly when I learned grace. It's funny that you mentioned that. I've done a 180. And honestly, COVID has a lot to do with where I am now mentally.
Mhm.
I'm definitely happier than I've ever been and more fulfilled. And it really stems from first letting go of that perfectionism, and you kind of, we're all just winging it. And it really just puts it all into perspective, you know? Oh,
Yeah, that whole time, it's weird to think that we went through all of that. Now I wanna transition into that because we've learned about you, what it was like in the beginning, some of the runs that you've had, the fact that you're kind of a magnet when it comes to certain things, right? But a lot of people, everyone in the world, everyone was impacted by COVID, by this
yes.
pandemic. You first start seeing it in the news, like, oh man, I hope that doesn't come here. And then it starts getting worse and worse. And you're like, holy shit, we are living a movie right now. Like this is
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
seen this play out. And also Netflix had a movie that was
Yeah.
about COVID. I mean,
Right.
how the hell are you going to have a movie come out when we're in the middle of a
Right.
pandemic and people are locked in their houses?
Yeah.
People are scared enough as it is. And from what I had read, the movie had been like filmed like a year beforehand or something. And they're like,
Which
oh,
is eerie.
right. Yeah. It's like, how did you know?
Right. Yeah.
But
Mm.
I think a lot of people ended up kind of dialing in into a lot more things, whether it be self reflection or different projects that they had been putting off for a long time or things that they had thought about doing and um didn't realize that they were going to have the time to
Right.
get into that. You kind of had a transition, so let's jump into this here. How did COVID impact you? Because you started painting and doing a lot of different things, as you're saying, a lot of self-reflection, and the life kind of got put into perspective even more.
Oh, absolutely, it did.
Hmm.
So with COVID, my husband and I are both in the medical field. At the time, he was a nurse in the ICU at the hospital closest to us, and we had two small kids. My youngest was 1, and the my older one was 3. So they're very little,
Hmm.
and we were concerned, obviously, of bringing it home and having no place to quarantine. Should we bring it home? What it's going to do to us? This is before any type of vaccine was out there, and you know, um, people saying that kids could get this and die. And as a mother, like that's terrifying. It's
Hmm.
paralyzing. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was getting up, getting dressed for a war I was never prepared for. Um, to fight in equipment that was not going to keep me safe because it was changing every 2 weeks. We had a different recommendation. And how can you sit there and say that that's safe if now, 2 weeks ago it wasn't safe, but now it's okay, and in another 2 weeks is it not going to be safe again? What does that mean? What does that mean to my family? And that really really took a toll on me. I remember one day I was working on the truck, and this is before they really announced that nursing homes were hotspots for COVID. But
Hmm.
it makes total sense because they can't get away from each other, and they're kind of packed in there like sardines in a lot of cases. So we had this guy who was clearly struggling to breathe. He was altered, so he wasn't really talking to me at all. His vital signs were terrible. His pulse ox, which should be at 100, was 60. And the things that I could do for him to save his life, essentially, we weren't supposed to do based on our new protocols because it could put us at risk. Unless you absolutely had to do it, we weren't supposed to do it. So what I mean by that is a nebulizer, a CPAP where they do compressed air on your face, or intubation where you put a breathing tube down their throat, and or trachea specifically. But we weren't supposed to do any of that unless it was absolutely necessary. And this is a guy that it was absolutely necessary. But if I was to go and do that, I had to first take out this clear plastic drape and put it over his face to then protect me from any of the particulate that he could be spewing. And we didn't know that he had COVID at that time, but he was febrile, he was altered, he had all the signs of it, and he did wind up being COVID positive. But in order to to manage his airway for him, to put that tube down his throat, trachea, I should know that. I do know that, but it's just easier to say down your throat.
Hey, that's easy. It's probably easier for the audience to understand as well. It's all good.
Semantics. Anyway, it looked like, from my perspective, that I was suffocating him first. And that's an awful feeling. And I felt helpless. And there was a 30-minute drive to the hospital. And it was just kind of like, I need you to stick with me. Like, just make it there, and so much that I could do, I couldn't in the face of this. And that was horrible. And it was draining and it was exhausting. And I was like, oh my God, I made it through it. Thank God. We cleared up from the hospital and they sent us right back to the same nursing home for the exact same kind of patient.
Oh, man.
And I was like, I'm done. I am done. I said to my boss, my immediate supervisor, if they bring those morgue trucks down here, I'm walking out of this job, of this profession, of everything right then and there. And I meant it. I could not handle another thing, because now on top of it, I put my crew at risk. I put myself at risk, potentially put my family at risk, and the hardest part was the idea of putting my children at risk, because, we'll do anything to protect them. I mean, even now I'm getting emotional about it, because it's still something that was so taxing, and paralyzing. So one of the ways that I have coped with any stressors in my life is through art. And I just felt this nervous energy kind of enter me where I had to do something. I wasn't working that day or whatever. And I came up with an idea. I took a picture of myself with a P100 respirator mask on, because I thought it kind of, we kind of all were doing that, taking selfies, because look at this nonsense that we're wearing.
Right. It's unbelievable.
But
yeah.
But like, how is this real life right now?
Exactly. Yes.
And I decided that I was going to attempt to paint that in kind of like a Rosie the Riveter style, where I would make a PSA of, we'll do our job if you stay home. Because at that point we were getting a lot of pushback. Why should we stay home? This is just a hoax. This isn't even real. And I'm like, take a step into an ICU and tell me it's not real. Look at these patients that are all on a ventilator in every single room of that ICU. Most of them are prone or will be shortly. The ones that linger that will just end up dying anyway. At our hospital, we had to open a second ICU just for COVID patients because they were so overwhelmed. Like, they had to double up on rooms because they were so overwhelmed. And then sit there and tell me that it's fake. Like, I was angry, and I also was just, I needed an outlet, a way out. And I created this painting of myself where it was kind of like Uncle Sam meets Rosie the Riveter, because I'm pointing at you and I'm like, we need you. You can stay home. You can do this. And then it says, we need you to stay home. That was the first painting I did. And then I talked to one of my girlfriends who is an ER nurse, who happens to be Asian. And she mentioned that people were being, rude to her. Her patients were actually more afraid of her because she was Asian, than realizing that she's on the front lines with everybody else trying to help them. So I said, can I paint you? And she was like, I guess, sure. Like, if you want, so I painted her, and I did it in the same, style, with like the dark blue background and the yellow, solid yellow, behind her. And from there, it just kind of took off. It just turned into this project that blossomed. And I call it the modern day Rosies. To date, I have painted 37, and these are all women in different roles.
Wow.
I have someone in EVS, so environmental services within the hospital. I have someone who drove the trucks to deliver supplies. I had someone, I had a funeral director. I have a therapist. I have respiratory therapists who, definitely didn't get enough clout during COVID because they really were in the thick of it as far as being exposed. I have tons of EMTs and paramedics because obviously that's, what's nearest and dearest to me. And it just turned into this beautiful project because by shining a light on these women individually, I was also shining a light on their profession, on their community. And it turned into this surreal project that I couldn't have even fabricated if I wanted to. I've had national recognition for it. I've been nominated for a Paramedic of the Year, both at EMS World, which is a national level, and then through the state as well. And my work has been seen overseas, so it's like, holy crap. It's like something that I'd never started to see, what I could make out of this turned into something that was meaningful to other people. And now I'm actually making a book, and I'm taking, just kind of like you are, those same stories, those women who have those stories, and sharing them in a book called Modern Day Rosies, The Women Behind the Masks. And it's really been life-changing for me. Like, having the privilege to speak with someone in a very vulnerable moment. And I mean, even now I'm getting choked up talking about it because it's so intimate and it's so special, and they are trusting you with their story to write something that's meaningful, that's beautiful, that resonates with others. It's just so special and has really taken on a life of its own. Something I couldn't have fabricated in a million years. The book now has 55 women, so I've gone up a little bit, and just, it really made me realize that COVID affects everyone. It did affect everyone, so I have women that were stay-at-home moms, and I have, like I said, a funeral director. I have a Rosie the Riveter, a true Rosie the Riveter, who turned around and started making masks for free for the public, and just really special people, and special stories. And I'm so excited about it. And it's actually turned into a second project because, I can't just,
Can't
it's
stop,
actually
won't
turned into
stop, right?
a couple of different projects.
Uh-huh.
But the one most closely related to this one is I unknowingly created an art therapy for myself. I didn't realize that it was truly art therapy. It was just my thing. So now I want to try, and I'm creating a program where I can bring that same art therapy to other first responders, other people in healthcare, where I call it the Control Alt Delete method. You take that control that we all have to have, you throw it out the window. You take that mindset of, we have to have things a certain way. I have to do it this way. I won't be good enough if I don't do something a certain way. And you change your mindset. You say, no, I won't accept those thoughts, those negative thoughts. This is who I am. This is what I'm here for. And I have purpose and I matter. And we change those thoughts. And then if there's anything that you don't like while you're creating that art, throw it out. It doesn't matter. All it matters is how you feel while you're doing it. And that's really so special. It gives you the grace, like you said, of accepting that it's okay. You don't have to be perfect. There's so many people that have this misconstrued conception that art has to be something that is worthy to be in a museum. It doesn't. Art of any kind only matters to the person creating it, and that it means something to you while you're doing it. If you're proud of it, I'm thrilled for you. No matter what it is, that's awesome. And keep doing it, because that's what's going to help you heal. And it's helped me heal. And it's resonated with other people in our field and outside of it that have said, you know what, you're right. This is a great thing. So it's really turned into this beautiful project, and I'm so excited to get that off the ground. My book will be coming out in the fall, and it will be available on Amazon and Ingram Sparks. I'm hoping to eventually get it into places like Books A Million and Borders, but that's further down the line. But I'm really just excited about it. I have another project where I've found women of 9/11 who really didn't get a whole lot of recognition. Not that any of us do it for recognition, but
Right.
when it was all about, oh, the men did this and the men did that, and they're like, we were there too. So that turned into a whole other painting series that's been in museums. The ones that I've created so far, that's another 50 women, and I hope to turn that into a coffee table book as well. So I'm a busy lady, and hopefully eventually I can start speaking at various conferences as well, because I think that this message is important, and I want to get it out there, that you're not alone, that it's okay to not be okay, and mental health is important, and you should try to attack it, as best you can, however you can. I personally think art is the best way to do that. So that's where I'm
Damn.
at.
That is amazing. Oh, so when I was reading some of the stuff that you sent, excuse me, by email, but also on this on a website as well, which it's a link that I'm going to put when I post the episode too, because it's got some of your paintings on there and everything. This that I had here to go off of for notes was no justice to what you just told me. Like that's a lot of stuff, and these are good things. These are powerful things. I
Yeah,
tell people that if you don't believe in the power of storytelling, man, you need to look at it again, because there is tons of power in storytelling and the stories that come with a lot of projects that go out there, especially this one that you are doing, the multiple ones that you're doing. But I have to ask,
oh,
when you did this first painting, how did that feel? Was that a
weird,
release? Was
weird.
it weird? Because
Yes.
okay, I'm saying too, because like some of the stuff that I've done like early on, like 10 years ago when I first started doing everything that I'm doing, I didn't at first realize. It was kind of like you. It was kind of weird. Like I didn't realize that it was a release. Like I felt that, that sigh
Yeah.
of relief a little bit, but I hadn't connected the dots yet. I didn't
Right.
realize that I was healing and kind of finding a form of closure in myself in what I was doing by sharing, that I had actually taken this first step until I started doing it a little more, and that realization finally hit. So
That's
for you,
exactly that's
yeah.
exactly what I felt. So I was more focused on, it's really weird to paint yourself. Um,
I bet, yeah.
so so it was that at first, and I, like you said, I hadn't connected the dots that what I was doing with each painting was
Mhm,
healing myself a little bit more. I had no idea. I was doing this for other people because it meant something to them.
mhm,
And I was proud of the work I was doing. I was getting better with each one, because before this I didn't paint people at all. Like, at all. I taught myself how to paint,
mhm.
so I don't have the confidence to be like, oh, I just use this method and blah, blah. Like, I just kind of throw stuff together and hope it works, and so far I've been lucky with this, and that it has worked. But, if you look at that painting versus, you can kind of see the one over there. No, that shoulder. There we go.
Yes.
Can't. I'm reversed. Okay. Anyway, that's going to be the cover of my book, and that's also me, but that one is much, much more detailed than the very
Mhm.
first one, and you can see the transition. Which,
Nice.
with anything like practice, you get better,
Right.
right? So, and I didn't expect that either, and um, it's kind of got that Norman Rockwell feel to it that I didn't anticipate, but I loved him as a kid. So I kind of love that. Like, I didn't, you know, I didn't set off to be that way. I just had this vintage idea.
Mhm.
And the iconic Rosie the Riveter that everyone knows about is not actually Norman Rockwell's painting. It's J. Howard Miller. But he's still the one that they associate with because of the type of, they call him an illustrator. I think he's an artist, but they call him an illustrator, that he's associated with. But I mean, to be anywhere near those two is like a dream come true, that I didn't know I had.
Yeah.
So, it's
This
just,
is it's great to see this and to hear it, because I can feel like the passion and how powerful this is for you. And
yeah,
not only to be doing this in the beginning, for yourself, but then for others, and others to see this. And looking at this website here that I have, there's multiple paintings here, and you can feel the power in those as well. And
I've been told that. I've been
I
told
can
that,
I
yeah.
can I can see you sitting there putting everything that you have into this, and I'm getting goosebumps just kind of thinking about it. But it's that passion that ends up coming out, and like I said, people can see it, people can feel it, and especially the way you're talking about it. Like, I'm excited for you. Like, this is gonna be really good, and
Thank you.
it's also interesting though that a lot of these passion projects, they end up coming out from stuff that we were kind of struggling with
Yeah,
within, that we were able to get out and put it, whether it be in writing, in audio, video, painting, whatever it might be. This is our art, and we're expressing it in a
yeah.
way that is making other people feel, understand, and they're able to share, however, because of the stuff that you've done. It's
If you would
great.
have told me 3 years ago, thank you, that I would have been writing a book, I would have laughed at you because,
Right, as you're drinking your coffee.
yeah, that's funny. Yeah, and the world's gonna shut down? Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah,
Even that as well,
right.
yeah, like, "No, you're talking about a movie, like,
Yeah, this is
that
right.
sounds like a
I don't buy
B-list
into
a
that
B-list
conspiracy
movie."
stuff. Yeah, no, no, no.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and here
Yes.
we are on the other side of that. So, yeah,
Yeah, and then
it's really been so powerful for me. Like, I feel it as I'm speaking to you right now. I'm definitely excited about it, but I'm so passionate. And it's funny that you can feel that too, because that is exactly how I feel right now. I feel like it's like a Care Bear coming off my chest.
right, the Care Bear stare with a
Yeah.
Oh, man, I love that, I love that.
Oh,
So as we go into the wrap up of this episode, which has been amazing to have you on, and looking at the time that we've been on here, it doesn't even feel like it's been an hour that we've been
no.
talking at all. Like, I could have been on the radio sending you to calls. Like, we could have been coworkers.
Yeah. You probably wouldn't have been thrilled to see me that day, though. You'd be like, "Oh,
I
come
know. I'd be
on.
like, oh, damn it.
I needed like a chill shift today, and you're here." All
No,
right. I did bring
I always
coffee,
love being
though.
busy. Oh, okay. Well, then we'd be cool then. We'd be good.
Okay.
Coffee and a pastry, we
If
good.
I had the chance to stop in, because I could never guarantee that, though.
Oh, that's true.
I
Yeah. If it's very busy. No, very true.
I'm like, "It's on the dashboard."
I
Ah.
would make the run for it. I'd be like,
Yeah.
later, I'm go get it and come back. So I've got two questions for you. One is going to
Okay.
be how people can find you, but I want to ask you this first, since we've gone through all of this, kind of reflecting on your time, your story. You've got 12 years in and everything. But if you could go back in time with the knowledge that you have now to talk to yourself at the beginning of your career, what advice would you give yourself?
That's so funny because that's one of the exact questions I asked the women in my book.
Oh, now it's your
I
turn.
Yeah. Huh. Um, I I spent a lot of time really being unfulfilled and sad that I wasn't able to make it in medical school. Like, I really gave it everything that I had. I
Mhm.
eventually got pregnant and just wasn't, on my path. But I wanted to use, my brain in such a way, and I felt like that was the only way I was going to be valuable. And now, looking back after this project, while I'm even, still in this project, I would say to myself, it's not all that it's cracked up to be, and there's more out there for you. I am more fulfilled now than I think I could have ever been, and not that I wouldn't have found a career as a physician fulfilling, but
Mhm.
it's restrictive, and this isn't. This is something of my own creation. I make the rules, I make the story. It's something that is just has meant more to me than I could have ever imagined, and something I definitely never saw coming. So I would say, go the way that you're going. Keep at it. There's nothing wrong with all the knowledge that I have, even though I'm not going to use it officially and have a ton of student loan debt, for no great reasons.
Yeah.
But I still have all that information, and I actually impart some of that into my medic students and my EMTs now. So there's still a benefit, even though it didn't have the initial outcome I wanted. That's okay. I have two great kids. I have a husband who loves and supports me. I enjoy everything that I'm doing. I'm happier than I've ever been. And it was all worth it. Even the heartache, it was just 100% worth it. So that's
I
what I
love
say.
that. I love that. That is great. Excellent advice. And how can people find out more about you and everything that you're doing, whether it be social media, website, anything like that?
So if anyone wants to read any of the various articles or watch any of the other interviews, if you Google Kate Bergen paramedic, I come up, which is cool to say, like, oh, you can Google me, and it's not for bad things. Like, right?
Yes. It's all good
So,
things. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Now,
also, I have an Etsy page
mhm.
called Kate the Riveter, and you can find me on Facebook, same way, Kate the Riveter,
Awesome.
and Gmail, katetheriveter@gmail.com. So
Perfect.
real easy. I'm super easy to find.
Well, thank you, Kate, very much for coming on and sharing your story and your project and everything. And I'm excited to see where it goes. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
This was a lot of fun, and I will be back here with you in just one moment. And for those who are watching, listening, all of that, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter, that is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook, that is facebook.com/within the trenches podcast. This episode has been sponsored by In Digital, a leader next gen core services, and a shout out, as always, to subscribers of the podcast, whether it be on Patreon, patreon.com/WTT podcast, or Facebook, and that is slash within the trenches podcast /support. But to make it all a lot easier, you can simply go down to the link that's in the bottom left hand corner. Those on audio, it is links.co, and that's links with two eyes.co/WTT podcast. And you can find everything on there. That is my bio page. You can listen to the newest episode. You can become a subscriber of the podcast for bonus content. You can find the book, pre-order, merch store, all of that good stuff you can find there. This can be seen on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, as well as LinkedIn Live, and then to listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.